Hey everyone, Ariel Adams here with the Superlative Podcast. My guest today is Fabrizio Buonamassa. He is the designer of Bulgari. Fabrizio, welcome.
Ciao a tutti. How are you,
Ariel? I'm good. I am always excited about our conversations, not only because I consider you to be one of the finest working designers in the watch space, but also because you're such an interesting guy who incorporates everything you love into watches. I guess my first question is, try to specify exactly what your job is. I always see you as the guy that designs Bulgari watches. You do obviously more than that. Explain a little bit about what your role today in Bulgari is.
My role, thank you for the introduction, first of all. You are very kind. My role in Bulgari is 80% to design watches. Sometimes I participate in development and design of jewelry, accessories, often accessories more in licensing, like sunglasses, for example. The male sunglasses, the lady sunglasses often is designed with me. But that's it. I talk a lot with the press. I talk a lot with the clients. That's my role, let me say.
Now, Bulgari is obviously a very dynamic corporation, and watches are, for us, the most special part, but maybe not the biggest part of Bulgari. How big is the design team? Is it all in an office? Is it spread out a little bit? I guess, help explain to people, how many designers does a company like Bulgari hire these days?
Let me say that we have, if I remember well, three different design teams. One for the watches, the other one for jewelry, and the third one is for accessories. The perfume use external consultant and some internal resources. But for sure, the biggest is the jewelry design department in Rome. I don't know how many designers are involved in the process. I think more than 10. In watches, we are working on that. We are hiring new designers. Today, we are 5, plus me. And in accessories, honestly, I don't know. You have to imagine that we have 20 designers, more or less.
And is the design process normal at Bulgari? Like, is it the same than it would be at, sister LVMH brands, other Italian luxury companies? Or is there something special or different about the way products are birthed at Bulgari?
But let me say, I don't know the other process in the LVMH group, because honestly, from my point of view, each brand is different with their own DNA. So we share some platform in terms of technological synergy and components sometimes for watches. Not often, let me say, but in terms of design strategy, each brand is independent. So we develop our design, we develop our watches, our jewelry, accessories, perfumes, hotel and resorts alone. We discuss internally with the COMEX, with the member of different business unit about what we have to do. We discuss a lot about the future of the company. And even for me, it's very important because I talk a lot with the press, I talk a lot with the client. And as my job title is Executive Director for Creativity, not just for watches, often I discuss with the jewelry division, I discuss with accessories division. So it's all about Bulgari, let me say.
What is the background that you had from an educational, maybe career standpoint that allowed you to get to the position that you are at Bulgari? You obviously have had, I think, a few roles at Bulgari, but what kind of educational background was it required to get there?
Honestly, the designer, each one has a different background, let me say, because design is not just a job, is a mix of different jobs. During my career, I was even a teacher when I was in Turin, and even when I was in Rome at the beginning. And I met a lot of designers coming from different environment. Sometimes you have designers that are able to draw. Some other times you have designers that are able to think and write. You have a lot of very famous architects still today. They are not able to make beautiful sketches, but have fantastic ideas. So the background is is different. I started my career when I started my career when I was 4, and I started to make my sketches at home about comics and the beginning and immediately after cars, thanks to the job of my father. And I never thought to have a different job, honestly. I'm very lucky because for sure I have a gift. But I spend for many, many years of my life, more than 10, 12 hours per day, making drawings. The secondary school was the artistic school for me, so minimum 4 hours of drawing, sometimes even 8. And when we finish the school, I go back to homework, making drawings and making sketches. So for many, many years, I spent a great part of the day making drawings, even during the night. It was very easy for me, for sure. But this is the reality. If you have a gift, you have a big responsibility because you have to nourish the talent. So I started my career in the automotive industry. My degree thesis was a car designed with the Fiat Centro Stile. I spent more or less 3-4 years in Fiat Centro Stile for the stage, for the degree thesis, and after they hired me immediately after. And in 2001, I decided to move to Bulgari in Rome. And I joined the company in 2001. I started making sketches about dials, and one of the first job was imagine the Octo bracelet. It was not yet a Finissimo. It was a big watch with a completely different management in terms of brand because it was the Gerald Genta and Daniel Roth management. I left the company in 2005. I joined the company again in 2006, more or less 2006, 2007. And I decided to move the design center from Rome to Neuchâtel in 2011 to follow the amazing process behind the Octo Finissimo.
I want to go back to drawing a little bit. You, of course, accurately said that there are working designers who cannot draw. But I wonder if that's maybe an aberration. I believe that maybe most designers should have a background in hand illustration. To me, a designer who can't draw kind of sounds like an athlete, who doesn't go to the gym. Like you have to do the basics, right, if you're going to be a performer. And I just want to know your own opinions on the importance of drawing. You said that you'd spend many hours each day. Obviously, it was an obsession of yours. You loved it. But for people out there, many of which would love to be designers, potentially design watches, don't really know what skills to acquire, especially in their youth. What are your opinions on the importance of beginning as a foundation with hand illustration?
The sketch and the ability making drawings and sketches is very important because it's the first... thanks to the sketches, the first time that you see what you have in mind. But I know designers and architects that are able to write very well what they have in mind. So for sure, the sketching is a very important tool. Today you have iPad or tablet that you can merge a lot of different techniques, like you can draw in Photoshop, you can draw in Sketchbook, in Procreate. And you can make all what you want today because you can mix and merge different techniques you can make a sketch by hand, but you don't like it. You can scan and you can correct the sketch through your apps, and you could have a perfect sketch. But the most important tool for me is what you have in mind. Which kind of questions you have in mind. To be a designer, you have to merge a lot of different job. You have to be able to catch the hidden needs of the market. You have to be able to understand and develop the DNA of the brand. You have to be able to imagine which kind of client is in front of you, why a client has to use an object that is in your mind. If the questions are correct, you can design an airplane, a train, or just a screw. But if the questions are not correct, you could have the most impressive skills making sketches, but you are an illustrator, you are not a designer. The designer must be able to turn in a real product the needs of the client, to improve the quality of the client through the objects. It's just sometimes an emotion that comes from a surface, from a finishing. Some other times it's changed completely your life because look at the iPhone, for example. The big step that you have through the iPhone, if you compare with the previous mobile phone, they change completely the way to use the object. This is design. It's not just to making a beautiful sketch or to imagine a beautiful object. This is a style. Design is totally different. Design, as you can say in Italy, is applied art to the industry. For the Italians, it's something that you can imagine is a sort of art, because we love to merge different technique, and we love to merge different know-how with very unique flavors. So design is a very complex word. Is a word. It's not just a sentence. It's not just a job. You have to be a bit like you have to know the economics around the words to see how the tastes change, because you know that now the most powerful country in the world has a certain is in a certain part of the world, so the taste is gonna change. But what's going on in the evolution of the economics in the next 4 or 5 days? Designer is someone who is able to imagine a watch today, but it's going to be on the wrist of the client in the next 4 or 5 years. So right. In terms of taste, in terms of way to use the object, what's going on? You have to be able to imagine the future. On the other hand, you have to be able to respect the DNA of your brand and each time add something. All these kind of things is difficult to do just with a sketch. So you could have an
expression
idea.
is a big part of it.
Exactly.
You have to express it.
You could make a beautiful sketch, everything is clear, but behind the designer there is a product development team, there is a marketing team, there is a communication team, there is a company able to produce objects, because otherwise it's just a sketch, it's not a product. So it's a long process. You don't have to pay attention to the one-man show, because it's not the reality. Behind the watch that I can make in a few seconds for a sketch, there are 500 people working on my sketch. And you have to trust in your idea, and you have to convince a lot of people, even the management, that this is the right idea for the brand, and everybody must be on board. Otherwise.
Understood. What a complete answer, with so many things, of course, to think about. I couldn't possibly respond to them all, but obviously, I hope that maybe in your future you'll go back to teaching, because you obviously have a passion about the topic as much as the practice of design. Bulgari, of course, is an Italian brand. It's one of the most well-known Italian luxury brands. Of course, the watches are made in Switzerland. And it's, again, a little bit of a difficult question, but if you had to explain an aesthetic or a theme or something which ideally transcends all Bulgari products, especially the watches, what would that be? You know, you're trying to explain to someone, this is what a Bulgari designed item is, and maybe this is what a Bulgari designed item is not, just to help people understand how you perceive the brand.
Each brand has his own codes, his own rules, and you have to be able to respect, and you have to know very well in your mind, in your soul, but on the other hand, you have to be able to forget it immediately, because otherwise you design each time the same things.
Okay.
The most important part is to know the roots of your DNA, the story of the brand, the story of the founder. So Bulgari is a very unique brand, because it's the unique brand in the art luxury that come from Rome. Is the unique jewel maker, watchmaker that come from Rome, not just for Italy. Italy is a big country, even if it's small in terms of size, but we have a lot of different, let me say, aesthetic motifs. During the centuries, we had a lot of different dominations. So you see in Palermo, in Venice, you see the same Arabic theme, but you go in Rome and you see a lot of different styles. So Bulgari is more than that. Is a very unique brand that comes from Rome, try to embody the soul of the Roman kingdom, thanks to the surfaces, different way to play it with the color, because the light in Rome is different if you compare with the light that you have in Milan or in Turin or in Venice. The palette is different, the tastes are different, the way to play with surfaces. We love to play with geometrical and architectural elements. We are very close to the certain part, a certain architectural style, like functionalism or rationalism. You don't have applied decorative elements. You just have to play with geometrical shape, pure shape, that when you combine together generate a new aesthetics. Look at the case of the Bulgari, or look at the case of the aluminum. It's just a round shaped case that in a certain moment there are cylinders that have to has the function to be the link between the bracelet and the case. So Octo Finissimo is the same. We love to combine different geometrical and pure shapes. The round shape bezel with the octagonal bezel come from our archive. So Bulgari is a very unique brand because in our archive, in our DNA, we have a lot of different signs. But for me and for the brand, the archive is just an opportunity to reinvent the brand each time. Bulgari is a contemporary brand. We don't love to play with our archive to make copy and paste. We don't have fun when we go in the archive in Rome and say, maybe we have to make again this watch. It's not something that is funny for us and neither for the client. We are very well known for the Serpenti to Bogas. We are very well known for the Octo. No comparison on the market. You love it or you don't love it, but at the end, it's just two amazing Bulgari products. So it's difficult to explain, but even in our product development process, we are different. In the many watchmaking industry, they love to play each time with the same rules during the decades. And they don't have, let me say that they have a different approach with the creativity. In Bulgari, we have a perfect environment to nourish the creativity. Everything is possible if it's a part of the brand. And today I'm the oldest in the watches business unit. So my role, it's even the role of the guardian of the codes of the brand. Often we have a lot of discussion. We would love to have this and that. And as a designer, as a creative director of watches business unit, as the guardian of the sign, I immediately say, tell me why we have to do something like that. Tell me why this is a part of the Bulgari story. I'm very picky because you cannot play with the brand DNA in a very sporty way, let me say. You have to pay attention because otherwise the client is lost. And since the client is lost in watchmaking industry, you need 5, 6, 10 years to have the client again on board with the brand. So often I have to say no. And because for me, the brand identity and the brand DNA is the most important part of the brand.
Thank you for that. Now, some time ago, the Bulgari brand made the acquisition. This is even before the LVMH acquisition of Bulgari, of the brands Daniel Roth and Gerald Genta. And now those brands are being operated by La Fabrique du Temps under the LVMH. But the sort of remaining legacy at Bulgari from this time was the Octo Case, the Gerald Genta Octo Case that was originally designed by Gerald Genta and then became morphed by you as this combination of a Gerald Genta object and a Bulgari object. And over the last several years, the Octo Case, my understanding is it's been, one of the best sellers, very, very successful. I would love it if you could explain a little bit what process you did to take this Gerald Genta icon and to merge it with the Bulgari DNA and the Bulgari process to make it not just a new item, but something that fits into this sort of design code universe of Bulgari. Because from a design perspective, this was a challenge. This was very fortunate that it was a successful product. And it's easy to look at the final thing and say, oh, that was easy. But we've talked about this many times over the years. And I think that from a design exercise and branding exercise, this was very well done, but also very, very challenging. And I'd love your thoughts.
Yes, it was very, very challenging, even internally for the company. So, long story short, we bought Gerald Genta and Daniel Roth, Manufacture des Horlogeries, in 2000, if I remember well, from Hourglass. I joined the company in 2001. I never met Daniel Roth, I never met Gerald Genta. The idea of the Bulgari management was to buy Gerald Genta and Daniel Roth because it was the beginning of the verticalization. you must become a watchmaking brand. You must become a watch company if you want to achieve a certain result. So we start to buy suppliers, and we start to buy company able to turn Bulgari not just in a jewel maker, but even in a real in a watchmaking brand with full speed, let me say. And one of the first tasks was to create something that was iconic for both brand, and the management decided that the Octo was the shape to redevelop, thanks to the heritage of Gerald Genta with the octagonal shape. Gerald Genta was not the first to use the octagonal shape in the history of watches. You see octagonal shapes even at the beginning of the 70s, in the late 60s, made by other brands. Is in a shape that was let me say, with the human being from the beginning, because you can see octagonal object even during the Egyptians, during the Roman kingdom, because there is a specific meaning from the octagonal shapes in different countries, in different religions, in different ages. So the octagonal shape means the balance between the art, the life on earth, and the life on heaven. That's why you see a lot of octagonal shape in Asia, in Europe, in US, for different meanings. But backing on the Bulgari Octo, we decided to build the two companies to develop high-end watches. And from the beginning, the idea was to develop the iconic case from Daniel Roth and iconic case for Gerald Genta. The Manufacture des Hautes Horlogeries at the time doesn't have a design team. It was just the manager, driven and managed by Bulgari, that have to take care about the evolution of these two brands. So they start to help us to develop the Octo. I was at the beginning of my career in Bulgari, and we received just an idea that was just a sketch made with a pencil, and that's it, because the designer was not able to go ahead, and the brand was not able to go ahead alone. So they decided to ask to the Bulgari design team to help for the product development process, and we start to design the Octo with the Gerald Genta and Daniel Roth team, and with some other external suppliers, if I remember well. So the inspiration was the octagonal shape, but the inspiration was even to play with the very pure geometrical shape that you can find in Rome. You can find a lot of church with octagonal patterns, very ancient monument with the geometrical shape, and you see even a collection that we call Gemme Nummarie that was produced in the beginning of the 70s, thanks to the passion for Gianni and Nicola Bulgari for the coins. Bulgari was one of the first jewel maker able to play with coins like precious stones. On the Gemme Nummarie collection, you see that there is a coin with a round shape chaton on an octagonal base, on a octagonal background. So a sort of chaton made with two different shapes. The first one was the round one to hold the coin, and the second one, more decorative, was the octagonal shape. This kind of image was in my brain, and we start to discuss about that internally, and even with some external consultant, and we made the shape of the Octo, inspiring by Roman monuments, Gemme Nummarie collection, Gerald Genta heritage, and a lot of different things. They start to develop the brand. They start to develop the Octo with a very thick movement, with a very crowded dial. In a certain moment, Bulgari decided it was not able anymore for us to manage three different watchmaking brands. It was so dangerous, and decided to have just one watchmaking brand. So they arrived in my office and say, Fabrizio, it was July, I remember very well. It was the beginning of the vacation for watchmaking industry. Say, Fabrizio, in Basel Fair next year, we're going to present a brand new collection signed by Gerald Genta and Daniel Roth, and you have to design alone in your office because this is a secret. And we're going to unveil the watches during the Basel Fair in the next 7 months. So it was a huge work. I redesigned alone. The door of my office was closed for 2 months, and I redesigned completely the collection. We presented the watches in Basel Fair. It was a bit controversial at the beginning because sometimes we removed the logos, but we used the movement and we used the know-how from Gerald Genta and Daniel Roth. That at the end was the Bulgari know-how, because we spent a lot of money to implement and to develop these two brands. In a certain moment, we decided it was not enough, and we decided to develop some specific signature for the two brands. The Daniel Roth was the iconic case. We never changed. We just make an evolution of that with new movements and with new style and new proportions. For the Octo, we decided to go in deep, and for the first time, we decided to propose our minute and second with our Bulgari base caliber, to enlarge the crowd of the Octo, because it was a good success, but it was very, very segmenting in terms of shapes, in terms of movements, in terms of price, in terms of dial. So we decided to clean up all the dial, to remove these very fancy drawings and aesthetics. We decided to simplify the case because it was a nightmare, even in terms of productions. And it was not so comfortable, sometimes was not so comfortable on the wrist due to the thickness of the bracelet and the thickness of the case. We decided to redesign the bracelet, the Finissimo, the Octo steel bracelet, exactly like my first sketches more or less 10 years before. And we started a new age, a new era for the Octo. And the watch was called Octo Originale. Pay tribute for the original case that we designed with the Gerald Genta and Daniel Roth, but with a very affordable way to wear it, easier way to wear it, and very more affordable price if you compare with the first that was just Grand Complication movement. The watch was a good success, very encouraging us to keep working on the Octo. And in a certain moment, it was the moment to go and to see what we can find inside the Manufacture des Horlogeries. And we spent more than 10 years, more or less 15 years, to develop the Manufacture des Horlogeries, to develop movement that was just for Daniel Roth and Gerald Genta. And at a certain moment, due to the integration, we decided to use and to see what's going on in the Manufacture des Horlogeries. And we discovered an amazing savoir-faire that was the savoir-faire that we developed under the Bulgari umbrella, particularly for the UltraThin watches. And we decided to have a very all-in bet, let me say, Ariel, to find our path. Bulgari was very well known for the scuba, for the aluminum, for the plastic watch with the Bulgari case, but we were not recognized as the owner of a certain style or a certain path, like, racing team, aviation, or sports like polo or tennis. We were, even the clients say, but why I have to buy a Bulgari watch? I cannot see the brand in my life. So it was very unique because the scuba, the aluminum, the Bulgari were very iconic at the time. We had waiting lists for the scuba, but after the scuba, it was a very chic watch to go with your yacht, but it was not a professional diving watch. Even it was a professional diving watch, but the perception of the client was more to have a very cool diving watch, often in gold, in solid gold.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of 2000, the challenge was more or less 2010 was to find the Bulgari path to say why a client have to buy a Bulgari watch. Again, Ariel, look at my way to tell you the story. Again, is a question. Why a client has to buy a Bulgari watch today and in the future? We decided to invest a lot in the UltraThin movement. We found that the segment was very dusty, with always the same actor that make round-shaped watches with thin bezel, white face, and black alligator strap. So something that you can wear 4 or 5 times per year with your tuxedo, even more, but it was just a tuxedo watch. We decided to reinvent the UltraThin segment with a more contemporary approach, different materials, integrated metal bracelet, integrated leather strap, different movement, different aesthetics. And it was the biggest challenge because we didn't follow any trend. We were able to imagine the evolution of our DNA through the Italian let me say, the Italian way to wear the watch. Very chic, very discreet. It was even the beginning of the first crisis. We talk about the Lehman Brothers crisis. Nobody wants to show anymore the chunky gold watches on the wrist. This is design. You have to be able to catch the sign. Nobody want to share the big watches. A lot of people want to hide their revenues. So the watches start to become hidden under the shirt, under the jacket. So this is a sign that the tastes are changing.
And you have to pay attention.
Yes, exactly. As a designer, it is one of the most important things. So we put all the dots together on the table. We say we have an amazing skill to produce ultra-thin watches. We have a very iconic design that is the Octo, that nobody can expect that we can make an ultra-thin watches with this kind of aesthetics. There is a real needs of the market to hide the power. And why not? We have to try. And we decided to try. Without, honestly, with any trends that say to you, this is the correct way, any signals that say this is the correct way to invest your next 15 years developing watches for men, because it was a dusty segment. Nobody were interested in develop new ultra-thin watches. And let me say that after the Serpenti to Bogas, that was another chapter of my career in Bulgari, the Finissimo was the biggest challenge.
So let's talk about this ultra-thin, which I agree, Bulgari, under your stewardship, not only approached this challenge, but has really, really dominated in it. Before Bulgari, it was Piaget, for those who sort of are familiar with, who was doing this. And you really ate their lunch. I actually look at it as almost like racing, and you're kind of Ferrari here. And you come in, like, they have a good thing. And you're like, no, we can beat you with a fraction of a second better time. And that's really what it was. We're going to take your records and we're going to cut them just a little bit just to say we're better. And it seemed like you did it not without preparation, but like you said, it was dusty. Whereas Piaget, when they sort of resumed ultra-thin, this was picking up of what they did in the 1960s, right? This was the last time anybody really cared about ultra-thin mechanical, because after that, quartz took over and was naturally thinner. So everyone needs to know that when mechanical watches were still, considered a regular part of everyday life, of course people wanted thinner and thinner movements. And there was all this development which sort of reached a pinnacle in the 60s. By the early 70s, quartz already made it clear that ultra-thin mechanical watches weren't necessary. So it wasn't until many years later in the 2000s, really, that the development of ultra-thin mechanical watches was in. As you said, Fabrizio, there was not really much demand for it. No. And since you did it, I think the ultimate, maybe flattering remark, ironically, a sponsor of Ferrari, Richard Mille, comes in and tries to do the thinnest, which frankly, I would prefer any of your Finissimo watches to that. But that, I think, is the ultimate testament that you did something correct, that, really the world's, most expensive watchmaker comes in and decides they need to have a stake at it and put in an investment. I don't think that, even though he may technically win in some tiny measurements, you still dominate there. But talk a little bit about, Piaget to Richard Mille and this whole experience with ultra-thin.
But, one of the most important CEO in the watchmaking industry, when we presented the Finissimo for the first time at the Grand Prix de l'Horlogerie in Geneva, after the celebration, comes to me and say, "Hi Fabrizio, this is my name," and say, "I know very well you." And Fabrizio, I have to say thank you. And I say, "Why you have to say thank you to me?" Because now we have a new challenge. We were alone for mostly 40, 50 years. And now we have a new challenge. So we are preparing something, I'll tell you. And we will see in the future. And I say, but thank you to you, because even us today, we have a new challenge. Because even us, we are preparing something very interesting for the future. So this was the reality. A lot of brands were alone in the watchmaking industry talking about ultra-thin watches. And after the Finissimo, a lot of very prestigious brands, very well known, start to play with the ultra-thin movements. They talk about UltraThin movements, but often their movements are double in terms of thickness if you compare with the Finissimo movements. But it's fine. We are very happy to be in a very good company. We are very happy that Richard Mille compete with us. That's something that you cannot imagine if you produce just the Scuba. And I'll tell you, 15 years ago, when we started the discussion of the Octo Finissimo, we say, but guys, who cares if we make a new UltraThin watches? But it was not just an UltraThin watches. It was a different way to wear a grand complication watch. Because when you talk about UltraThin execution with the automatic movement, we are talking about grand complication watch. That's why maybe after the Octo Finissimo, some brands were interested because it's a real achievement. When you are able to produce UltraThin movement, you are able to produce very, very important, you are able to manage very important know-how in terms of watchmaking skills. So it's like a bit like, I always say that UltraThin movement is like a Formula One car. It's the most exotic expression of technology. You must have just the components that have to work in a proper way. You don't have enough space for decorative elements. You don't have enough space for maquillage. You have just to go straight to the point. An amazing know-how, an amazing technicity, amazing components, and a lot of investment in terms of money and a lot of investment in terms of time and people.
What was Bulgari able to do to ramp up production? Because as you said, ultra-thin movements have really no tolerance for mistakes, and assembling it has to be perfect. Every part needs to be screwed in correctly. There's just really no tolerance for mistakes. And you make, not a huge amount, but you make more ultra-thin movements than maybe anyone thought was possible. Is it because you have just a lot of trained watchmakers, or is there something special from an industrialization standpoint that Bulgari was able to achieve to make it so that you could produce these in any volume?
As usual, when you have a success, it's not just one reason. It's a lot of different reasons combined together. We work in a different way. Our watchmasters call me and say, Fabrizio, please tell me which kind of complication you would love to have. This is the discussion around the perpetual calendar.
That's nice.
That's nice. In the other company, you have you have an office to develop movement and you have an office to develop design. In our way, we love to have an idea. I make a sketch. I discuss about that with my team. I discuss about that with the marketing, and immediately after, I discuss with watchmasters in Les Sentiers. Is it possible or not? Yes, is it possible? We need 3 years, 4 years. What I have to change? You have to change this, this, and that. Okay, I would love to achieve these results. Is okay for you? You are able to make this movement? Maybe yes, maybe no, we will see. We have some constraints. Tell me which kind of constraints you have. Tell me how can I help you. And I would love to have this kind of dial because I would love to have this kind of counter in this position. Okay, if you love to have this kind of counters, I have to move this, this, and that. It's okay for you? Yes, it's okay. Go ahead. This is the way of discussion that we have. I work on the design on my way with my team. And they work on the movement on their way with their team, and we have a lot of meetings and we discuss together. The Octo Finissimo Ultra was exactly like that. We didn't develop in-house because we didn't have the capacity, because we produce in-house the most strategic movement that we have, all the chiming watches, the most strategic movement around the Octo Finissimo, but the capacity of our manufacturing side is in a certain moment, it was completely saturated in terms of development. So we are able to do that. Yes, we are able to do that, but we don't have time. Okay, we have this idea. We have to find the right suppliers able to develop the idea and produce the watches. We found the supplier. We gave the brief to the supplier. The supplier arrived with a certain layout. The first meeting, I say, guys, this watch already exists. This is not an Octo Finissimo. You have to change completely your point of view and your mindset to imagine this crazy watch. Yes, but we have this kind of constraints. We have the shape. We have the octo. I say, no, you don't have to take care about the aesthetics. Because if the watch is an Octo Finissimo in their own DNA, in his own DNA, it's going to be an Octo. But if we have to play just with the bezel to say an Octo, because the rest of the watch doesn't talk the same language, we we miss an opportunity. So I would love to have this kind of movement, the fusion between the movement and the case. You have to spread out the components. I start making sketches on the table around what I had in mind. They were shocked and say, Fabrizio, we will see in the next month, and we see what we are able to do for you. And they arrived with the right proposals. This is the way that we have to work. Is a teamwork. The other watchmaking brand, as I said before, often they have a lot of cages, and each one have to work in a very specific way. Sometimes they don't have time, or the structure of the company doesn't allow to look at the other colleague on the same table. What's going on? So each one has his own path, and each one have to make his own job. In Bulgari, we facilitate the creative process. Sometimes it's difficult because we have so many ideas, and we want to produce all our ideas that it's very difficult. And now we start the phase 2 of the Octo Finissimo. That is the most dangerous one. Because once Michael Burke told me, Fabrizio, you could have a success. It's a mix of maybe you are lucky, maybe the stars in the sky are in the correct position, who knows? You could have a successful product. The most difficult one is to have the second one. So now we start to pay attention about the phase 2. We have to take care about the Finissimo collectors. We have to take care about their expectation. We have to take care about after sale service. We have to put a crazy attention on each single components in terms of finishing, in terms of quality. Not because in the past the products were not qualitative enough, because today we want to have more from our Octo Finissimo, and we want to push more certain specific features of the watch. And even because after 15 years of the Octo Finissimo, we can see things in a different way. So that's why now is the most difficult part of the game.
I understand. I want to bring up a question that many people have had, and it hasn't been like a serious concern, but when watches get so thin, by laws of physics, they become more fragile. And a lot of people may have a hesitation. I love the idea of an ultra-thin watch, but I'm worried about it breaking. If I sit on it? I don't know. Practically speaking, what have you learned about the real-world durability? And in joining in that conversation, what are some suggestions for people who wear Finissimo watches that may not apply to, your 300-meter dive watch?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. So honestly, as a designer, and it was even during the product development process of the Octo Finissimo Ultra, I have to imagine, and we have to be able to produce watches that everybody can wear every day. Otherwise, it's just something for your safe, or you can show to your friends during a dinner. This is not the scope. Yeah. This is not our idea. From the beginning, the Octo Finissimo was strong enough for an everyday life. I used to wear my Octo Finissimo, the automatic one, when we launched the watch in Basel Fair. Every day, for me, it's impossible to wear other watches, and I ride my motorcycles. I play with kids. The watch fall down three or four times. Still working. This is the biggest constraints. Guys, the watch have to work every day, and I have to be able to wear the watch every day. Otherwise, I'm not interested. This was even for the Octo Finissimo Ultra. That's why we decided to use the tungsten carbide, because the titanium was not strong enough. Your comment is correct. If we're talking about the watches of the 70s, do you remember some watches in the 70s, they were even obsessed by ultra-thin watches, but they doesn't have the technology. And each time that you put the watch on the wrist, the glass jump out, and the case changed the shape because the materials and the metal alloy, the know-how, and the technology was not the right one. Today, honestly, I can take my Octo Finissimo with me. Today we have the Octo Finissimo S, 100-meter water resistance, screwing crown, different gasket, different thickness for the glasses. We have a lot of different Octo Finissimo for different purposes. So the watch is strong enough. The titanium is strong enough. The minute repeater is strong enough. The chronograph is strong enough. The steel the same. The ceramic and the carbon are the same. We spend just to change the material if we already know the movement and the case. But when you change the material, you need more or less 2 years of development. To make the new carbon gold with the same movement, with the same aesthetics, we spend 2 years. To redevelop the bracelet from scratch, to redevelop the case from scratch, to redevelop the dial from scratch, and to change the bridges of the movement that now are in solid gold. So as you can see, we pay a lot of attention on these kind of elements. And again, I'm the worst client you can imagine for the product development team, and even sometimes for the marketing team, because I always say, no, I'm not interested in this development. I'm not interested in this kind of things. I love to make simple things, but often the simple things are the most difficult to do. Because you have to go straight to the point, and that's it. You have a lot
like
of...
a watch made from marble?
Exactly. The watch in marble, it was 6 years of development. In a certain moment, we started before the COVID, and in a certain moment, we lost completely the suppliers. After the COVID, we called back the supplier. Are you alive? Everything is okay. What's going on? Yes, everything is perfect. We are making some prototypes because we don't want to honestly, we want to have this product. We must have this watch made in marble. Don't worry. We don't have a delivery time today because the product is super difficult, but we're going to have the watch. And in a certain moment, like often happens in watchmaking, we said, okay, when you are ready, we are ready. And sometimes you have to play with the time in a certain way. If you are in a hurry, you can make mistakes. But sometimes you must be in a hurry to have a certain tension in terms of product development process. If you have a lot of time, you can make a lot of mistakes. If your idea is very clear, you can go very fast, straight to the point to realize what you have in mind. This is for all kind of job, not just for design. But the most important thing is the idea at the beginning. We would love to have the most contemporary ultra-thin watches. Okay, Fabrizio, which kind of case we have to use? The Octo, because nobody can expect that we can make a watch, a formal watch with this kind of sporty and chic case.
Especially non-round case, because
exactly.
Before that, there were some rectangular ones that were ultra thin, but for the most part, there was a round watch game, especially in the modern sense.
Yeah, this was the challenge. But again, the watch is strong enough for an everyday life. For sure, okay. It's not a diving watch. It's not a watch to use for outdoor, very, very dangerous outdoor activities. It's a watch to wear for a common life every day.
I actually wonder what's more fragile, an ultra-thin watch or one made out of all sapphire crystal, because it's as we add more exotic materials to the list of potential ones that you can make a watch out of, we move away from practical things like steel, which is in a lot of ways a perfect material for watches. Why did we become bored of steel? I mean, steel is a wonderful, wonderful material, but everyone seems to be excited about everything but steel. Is that a shame? Is steel underappreciated?
No, honestly, in a certain moment we had in our lineup for the Octo Finissimo just exotic material. It was titanium, it was the gold, it was carbon. In a certain moment, say, guys, but if nobody want to have a black watch or a dark gray watch or another kind of color or the gold one in sun-blasted finishing, they have no chance to buy an Octo. So for sure, at the beginning, we spent a lot of years, 5 or 6 years, to impose the aesthetic with the titanium and sun-blasted gold and carbon minute repeater. When the watch was in the head of a lot of collectors, we start to open with the steel. That is the most conventional material for watches. But you know why? You know the true story of the Octo Finissimo steel. The watch was born immediately after the launch of the titanium in Basel Fair. I don't remember the date. Maybe the titanium was 2016. 2014 was the tourbillon. 2015 it was the minute repeater. 2016 it was the the titanium, if I remember well. Basel Fair was over. We received a lot of comments because the titanium design was already appreciated very, very much with the Finissimo minute repeater, but it was just 30 pieces with a very expensive price. But everybody talk about it is kind of one finishing, one brand, one color, one material. So we decided to go ahead with the steel. And immediately after the Basel Fair, I talked with my boss at the time. I say, we're going to have a problem in the next 4 or 5 years because the titanium is not for everyone. If you don't like this kind of color, you don't have any chance to buy an Octo Finissimo. We have to imagine that today the Octo Finissimo has a very strong link with the finishing and materials. We have to go out from there and we have to imagine that the Octo Finissimo is able to impose without a very unique finishing and material. So I decided to create the Finissimo S, and I asked to the product development team to have a prototype. I put a watch on my wrist, and 3 months after the Basel Fair presentation of the Octo Finissimo in titanium, we decided to produce the Octo Finissimo S, because everybody in the corridor look at my wrist and say, what is this? It's amazing. The double finishing gives to the Octo a completely different style. The Finissimo with the titanium I love is my first baby, let me say. But when you wear the steel watch, you can appreciate the details of the case and the bracelet in a different way. So starting from the beginning, I have 2 Finissimo on my drawer, more than 2, but I used to wear the Finissimo in titanium that I use as a prototype watch, and I change the dial, I don't remember how many times per year. Each time that I have an idea, I has to have a dial, and I put on my personal Finissimo titanium, and I use the Finissimo S. The steel DS that I have on the wrist is a prototype watch because I used to change the dial more or less 3-4 times per month. So, but today, 90% of the time I wear the Octo Finissimo S because it's my favorite in terms of finishing, color, even weight sometimes, and way to wear it.
Okay, so you confirmed that steel's not such a bad material.
No, honestly, the steel watch with the blue dial is the most competitive watch that you can imagine in the male world. Everybody wants to have a steel watch with a blue dial or the black dial, but the blue is even more exotic, let me say, because it's like I'm wearing now my blue blazer. It's something that you can wear for formal occasion, but even for the day, for a common day. So it's very elegant and sport. At the same time, it's very Italian. It's very, very chic.
You know, I have to say, I don't know when I will be ready just to wear a black dial watch again. I used to love wearing watches with a black dial, and I guess maybe I fell under the spell of the trendiness. But I feel like I've done everything but wear black dials. I mean, I'm wearing a purple dial right now. I've got blue ones, a lot of blue ones, as you could say, green, of course, red, burgundy, yellow, orange. But for some reason, like, I can't get excited about a black dial unless a cool watch only comes in black, which is quite rare these days. I'm not saying there's an answer, but I'm wondering, because we know that tastes go in a circle. Eventually, I'll be like, oh, black dial, where have you been all my life? I've been missing you.
You know why, Ariel? Because you have a lot of watches. And you don't need a black dial. But if you have a lot of collectors, young collectors that doesn't have so many watches at home, so they prefer the Octo Finissimo steel because they can wear even during the summer. The very, very important collector used to collect the Finissimo in titanium. The young collector used to collect Finissimo in steel because they have less watches at home. And one of the most important collectors in the world once say, Fabrizio, I don't need to have 100-meter water resistant on the Finissimo. I have so many watches at home to dive that I never use the Finissimo. So I love the titanium because it's the first one, the origin of the aesthetics. But the young collectors say, I love the Finissimo S because I can wear even during the summer, even the Octo Finissimo in titanium. I used to wear in the summer, no issue. But on the Finissimo S, the young collector with the screwing crown are more happy to wear. But it's 2 different kind of approach. Please don't touch the Finissimo titanium, and the young collector, please don't touch the Finissimo S. So you have a lot of watches at home. I have a lot of watches at home. I love to wear fancy dial as you. But if you have just 3-4 watches at home, you must have a black dial watch or a blue dial one that is more versatile.
So if you're a young or less sort of accomplished collector listening, that's your future. Your future is in liking, as Fabrizio says, fancier and fancier dials. I guess sort of my last area of questions has to do with some future things you're looking forward to. And I'll begin with sort of materials. Today, we have some very sophisticated techniques to mill and 3D print materials and things like that. But the materials themselves come from sort of, we'll call them two different worlds. There's the synthetic material and the natural material. Machining marble to be made as a watch case is using sophisticated techniques with natural materials. And then, we have these carbons and things like that, which we could call them synthetic materials. You personally, is there one of the two areas you're more excited in? Using modern techniques to process natural materials, or maybe it's these exotic world of synthetics that seems to be an endless array of formulations and variations that may be more exciting to you?
I love to use common material in a conventional way. It's easy. It's easy to have a Bulgarium because you go in Lausanne in IPFL and you say, I would love to have my personal metal alloy. You can mix and match part of titanium, steel, silver, just a touch of gold. And at the end, they put in the shaker. And what's going on? You have a steel, you have a gray material that looks like steel. So at the end, for me, the aesthetic is very important. And everybody knows titanium in watchmaking industry, but just Bulgari can use sandblasted titanium to make the thinnest minute repeater on the market. Everybody knows gold in watchmaking industry, but just Bulgari can make a full gold sandblasted finishing case, bracelet, and dial. And everybody say, wow, this color is amazing. And the titanium, everybody say, wow, the finishing of the case is absolutely stunning. Honestly, this is the most difficult things to have this kind of reaction, because I love to talk with the client about something that they already know, but in a different way. Imagine if I start to play with the synthetic material, with the 3D printing. Today, we don't have any chance to have a proper finishing still today with the Octo if we use a 3D printing. So imagine that it's possible. And I use a very exotic composite material with a very unique shape, because if I use this kind of technique and I use this unique material, I have to change the shape to tell you, look at me, I'm using this material and this technology. So there are already three novelties for the client. And I have to use a new dial, and I have to use a new design for the hands. Otherwise, you can mix different, all the components, all the style with the brand new style. And what about the bracelet and the buckle? So the package is so dangerous for a client that say, wow, it's a brand new product. I know. But honestly, I don't know what I have to do with this watch. A new material, new shape, new ergonomic, new movement, new dial, new hands, new bracelet, new buckle. The clients, sometimes you have to take the hand of the client to explain the project. And the client want to use an object when he is familiar with, but he can recognize that it's some element that is brand new. Everybody used the mobile phone. Do you remember the Motorola, the StarTAC, the Ericsson, the Nokia? So I know the mobile phone. But in a certain moment, the Apple iPhone was on the market. Is an iPhone, is a mobile phone that I know in which kind of way I have to use it. I'm familiar with, but it was a brand new way, brand new interface. But if I change the interface, I change the shape, and I have to explain you which kind of way you have to use the object, I lost the client after 10 minutes of explanation.
And this is an industry, along with the technology industry, which has, again, it's not a bad situation, but has been guilty of getting too far ahead of the consumer. When you come out with something too new, too interesting, too revolutionary, there is a small number of people who will intellectually understand it, and everyone else does not want to buy things they don't understand. And so we've seen a lot of companies, and this is the term that, of course, is ahead of their time. The thing wasn't bad, but it can be a commercial failure if nobody knows why they should buy it. And so you are calculating, this is new, but not so new that I've just shocked the consumer into not even understanding what they're looking at.
It's too new. Sometimes the objects are too early, sometimes the objects are too late. So we spent 10 years to impose the Octo Finissimo. At the beginning, it was a brand new watch with a new material, with a movement that was already known because everybody knows the UltraThin segment, but it was a brand new watch. But we push a lot. We stress this concept because we were Bulgari, and everybody had to look at the watch and have to say, each component of the watch have to say, I'm the thinnest. But this was part of the game. We say, guys, we need time to impose these aesthetics. Are you okay? Yes, we are okay. We have to spend 5 years, 10 years to impose these aesthetics. Maybe it's too early. Maybe we're going to use just a small portion of the market. Yes, because it was a tourbillon and it was a minute repeater. But the game changer was the automatic one. And it was the fourth Octo Finissimo on the market, not the first one. So you have to leave time to the market. You have to take your client by hand and explain little by little. Take your time. This is a brand new watch made for an amazing brand, and we're going to discuss about this watch for the next 10 years.
Such an important point that the consumer just has to be educated. Really, that's what it comes down to. And someone like me, it's basically my job to educate myself on these things, and I still miss situations. I have to read documents multiple times. I have to literally look at a watch sometimes for days to know what I'm looking at. Your average consumer is going to take a lot longer. Final question, Fabrizio. And this has to do with, again, always the big question in the room is connected technology. In the LVMH group, you have Tag Heuer, who has a pretty successful Wear OS-based smartwatch device. You have Hublot that makes a smartwatch, Louis Vuitton that makes their own smartwatch with a different operating system. I am not suggesting that Bulgari make a smartwatch, but I am suggesting that there will be pressure at some point to integrate the Bulgari aesthetic and products into what I'll call the connected universe. You've obviously thought about this a little bit. What are some of the right ways you think for the Bulgari brand to be connected to the connected universe without necessarily making a consumer electronic device?
This is a very important questions, and honestly, we discuss a lot internally about that. We were one of the first brands immediately after Tag to make a connected watch. It was the Bulgari Magnesium with a very specific app. It was a prototype watch. Honestly, we discuss a lot about that, and Ariel, we don't have a sort of infinitive resources, and we don't have we have to pay attention because we have new clients that took at Bulgari for the first time, and we were able to change the mind of the client because, first of all, we changed our mind. Today could be very dangerous for Bulgari that makes, at the end, the first digital watch in the luxury area. It was the Bulgari Roma in a gold case. It was a digital watch in the 75.
Yeah.
Thanks to the crazy idea of Gianni Bulgari. But today, the market is different, and you have to pay attention and you have to respect your DNA. The client, again, the question. There is a client who expects a digital and connected watches by Bulgari? I don't know. There is a client that expects that Bulgari continue to invest in UltraThin watches and a very crazy execution for the movement. Yes, there is a lot. We want to go in that direction, or we want to be focused on your path today. We want to be concentrated on your path, the UltraThin and Grand Complication movement and chiming watches. We don't have the resources to produce even the connected watches, and I think that could be very dangerous from a brand DNA and marketing point of view to have a connected watches today, because the client could be lost again. And if you have a client that is lost, it it's very difficult to have a gain on board. And we are a jewelry brand that make even 10 pieces. We are not talking about Rolex, Patek, or Audemars Piguet, or Richard Mille, or other brands that were built up and were born as a watchmaker. We are a jewel maker. So we have to pay more attention, and we have to be focused on our clients, to find new clients, focus on our DNA. So just to make long story short, today we don't have any plan to produce a connected watch. We don't have enough resources. We don't have enough time. We have so many products that you can see, starting from the next Watches and Wonders, and we are planning movements for the next 4, 5 years, 6 years. And we don't have enough space in our manufacturing side. And I think that it is not a strategic investment for Bulgari today to invest in connected watches and this kind of technology.
Always something that you're thinking about. It's glad to hear it. This has been the Superlative Podcast with Fabrizio Buonamassa from Bulgari. Fabrizio, thank you so much.
Thank you, dear, for your question. It was a great pleasure. And thank you to everybody. And ciao a tutti. See you in Geneva in a few weeks.